Hi, and welcome to Network AF. Today I'm talking to Doug Madory, the man who can see the internet. We're talking about internet and the news, what's going on in the world and how it's affecting and being affected by the internet. We're talking about Ukraine, Egypt and outages there and other effects. And internet censorship seems to keep happening for various reasons. If you're curious at all, please give it a listen. If you're interested in Network AF, you can find us on podcasts and favorite us there. We will link the show notes today to this episode and also some of Doug's blogs. You can find him, Doug Madory, a blog on the Kentik blog, and also Doug Madory on Twitter, DougMadory. Hi, and welcome to Network AF. Today we're doing a current events update, and I've got with me Doug Madory, who's been on Network AF before. Doug, you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Hey, Avi. I'm Doug Madory. I'm the Director of Internet Analysis for Kentik.
And where are you physically right now?
Presently in Bonn, Germany. I was invited to be a panelist at the Deutsche Welle, which is the public broadcaster of Germany. They have an annual conference called the Global Media Forum, and I'm in here talking about internet disruptions.
Cool. I guess we'll talk about some of that today. For those that don't know, you are also known as the man that sees the internet, and have done that at multiple companies and most recently at Kentik, where we enticed you with visibility not just of BGP but of traffic performance and other data. I think the thing really topical over the last months and top of mind for everybody is Ukraine and what's going on there. Obviously, there's a lot of different layers of that, but underneath keeping people connected is the internet. And I guess I'll just start off. What's going on with internet infrastructure in Ukraine? What's been happening recently?
Yeah, we haven't spoken on this topic on this podcast about Ukraine, but the invasion took place on February 24th this year, 2022, and for the next month or so following that was a pretty busy time for me, just trying to keep up with what was going on. I think a lot of people were keeping up with what was going on in the news, and there was a lot of things happening internet-wise. And now the conflict, which sees no sign of resolving anytime soon, has evolved into a few different. I don't know what stage we're in now. It's definitely not we've left the first stage, or maybe we're on the third stage or something where it's
a different horrible stage. So
yeah, so in the outset, Ukraine was getting attacked from every direction. We were seeing all kinds of outages all over the country. Now the impact seems to be focused mostly on the east and the south of the country. And that's in keeping with, if you follow the news, the Russian strategy now has been to try to focus its efforts on those areas that they can ply away from Ukraine. And I guess the most recent development is just seeing some of the networks, the ISPs that operate in Ukraine, getting plucked off and rerouted through Russian transit. So in the city of Kherson in the south, at the beginning of May, there was an outage. The city was down for a couple of days, and then one of their main providers came back up using Russian transit, basically going down south through Crimea, through Miranda Media is the Rostelecom. Rostelecom is a state telecom of Russia. They have a local agent in Crimea that they set up after they annexed Crimea in 2014. And so this Miranda Media then became a transit provider briefly for Kherson Telecom, which goes by another retail name. I don't recall, Sky something. That only lasted a couple of days. It were reverted back to Ukrainian transit, and the CEO published something on social media saying, I had no choice. I had to connect this to keep us online. And then that story seemed like it was over. But then towards the end of May, then there was another outage. They switched over to Miranda Media again, and they weren't the only ones. There was there's been about 6 or 7 ASs that we've seen switch over to Miranda Media in that region, and it's not one single event. It's some of these are on different days that are getting switched over. So the implications are for anybody who's living in those areas that uses service there, that your internet and telephone service could be surveilled, intercepted, manipulated by the Russian government. Is the risk these folks face now. Yeah, that's the latest.
And so, for the most part, it seems to be people still in control of the networks in Ukraine, but being forced by economic or other, projectile weapon-based incentives to form the right transit relationships so that the packets go through unknown infrastructure that could do whatever to them.
Yeah, I heard from one of our Ukraine contacts. One of these was a shift at gunpoint, and so these are the same engineers that keep the telecom up, but they are now forced to route through Crimea.
Is that a first? So, a hijack, as in, a route jack, as far as you know.
Oh,
not via BGP exploitation, but by, I'll say more.
Yeah, I bet that's happened before. I mean, I can't think of an example that comes to mind, but I doubt that's the first time that's happened. But I would say this, that the second time around, when providers started switching over in Kyrgyzstan to Miranda Media, it wasn't like the first one where there was a complete outage and they had to bring things up. Mm-hmm. One of the providers switched immediately, like it was the circuit was ready to go, and so maybe this was a bit more of a planned switch over than what had happened to the EMA.
Now, I guess RPKI wouldn't be affected because it's only origin validation.
Yeah, right. It's not useful in this.
See if any of their transit providers use route registries and required updates that could cause a partial outage, the first time. But it's pretty. It seems like it's definitely a little bit of a shift forward we'll just say, to be non-judgmental, we'll say expands the universe of traffic engineering methods, but definitely not good. Now it's interesting because early on, it's a different kind of networking. Maybe Russia hadn't thought about the implications of using roaming cell phones for soldiers, and had some, implications there. And early on, it looked like, the internet was really being as reliable as you would expect it to be, as long as one last router of whatever type it was like up and connected. Like, it was really only when the physical damage got almost complete that those networks were going down.
And even in those cases, like it's been I think publicized and properly rightfully celebrated, there's been a lot of technicians in Ukraine that at great risk to themselves have gone out in fresh rubble to go reconnect fiber optic cables destroyed in the fighting. So that's I take pride. This is our industry. You and I, we're all in this. Right. Those are our people, and that's
yeah. After 9/11, there was I should really remember the gentleman's name, but he was posting from one of the mailing, Nanog, I think. He was in Telehouse, which was in the no-go zone. 25 Broad or Broadway, I should know that. Down in Broad, I think. No, Broadway. Down in Lower Manhattan, and he was doing hands and eyes for basically everybody because he was in the building. That was maybe uncomfortable but less dangerous.
People step up to the challenge, and that's what's happening in Ukraine.
So, if you look at the total amount of traffic to the country relatively, as the man who sees the internet, for the most part, there's still a tremendous amount of internet activity, and is it down?
There's been a decline since February 24th by volume. If we're just looking bits per second,
like half.
No, not even that. Not even that. I mean, maybe 20% or 30%. It's a fluctuating signal.
Mhm.
So, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's half. And so there's factors there. There's been millions of people who have fled the country. So
Yeah.
those are internet users that are no longer using the internet, that are gone. There's been things that have been broken, and that obviously is going to hinder internet use. And then also that for the people who have stayed, life is not quite as it was.
Mhm.
So they may not be Netflixing and chilling as much as they did prior to the 24th of February. So that can affect traffic volumes. So there's been a noticeable decline, and we've seen this. I think I posted a list of what we saw. A bunch of other
Right.
outfits,
Cloudflare.
Cloudflare, Google, the IOTA, which is a completely different set of
Mhm.
data, and that actually even tracks. So the IOTA data, this is the Internet Outage Detection. What's the A stand for? Project that's out of Georgia Tech now, and so this is the B2B routes, the active measurements, so pinging things. They have this little thing where they measure background traffic coming out of Ukrainian address space, and all those are different metrics than traffic volumes, and those two have dropped.
Mhm.
With some not to half, but maybe 25%, 30%. But otherwise, the country stayed online. It continues to stay online, and I don't foresee it.
Yeah.
The country being disconnected.
Well, hopefully, things go as well as they can possibly go for the people there, as well as for the infrastructure, and hopefully, how to VPN does not get blocked on search for people from those affected networks. But my guess is there's already some VPN going on there. I know there are some special offers that were going out basically just to help connect people reducing, or not charging for access, to different services, for people from Ukraine. So in other excitement, Egypt, there's all sorts of jokes about sharks, with lasers cutting, international.
That's right. Yeah.
But this was not this is not subsea. These were cables that were affected on land.
Yeah, so it's an interesting situation. So this occurred while we were at Nanog up in Montreal, and we saw the traffic fluctuation in a bunch of countries. Confirmed that this was subsea cable related, and I used the term. If you'll look at anything I put out, that there was an outage, meaning that service was on, but I didn't use the word cut because I don't know that the cable was cut, because that
An event.
That means something else. You can say outage because the service was not working on the cable, so it was out, but not necessarily cut. You have to be careful because it cut. And in reality, the submarine cable world is so opaque. It's very hard to get a full accounting of what takes place here. But in this case, we know that there was a cut on the overland circuit. So there's a lot of the big submarine cable routes of the global internet connect Europe to Asia, going through the Mediterranean, and then somehow making their way through Egypt to the Red Sea, out to the Indian Ocean, and on to India, Singapore, and so on.
If people want a picture of this, they can look at your blog post. Just Google Doug Madory and
yeah, I had an old one from a Telecom Egypt presentation. I used to go to a lot of submarine cable conferences and talk about partly what we could see from internet measurement on submarine cable incidents. And so that was one of the first tasks that was handed to me when I joined Renesas. Over 12 plus years ago, was like, we'll see what you can do. People always ask us about submarine cables, see if you can find something. So I started to try to figure this out. And then, it's still a very imprecise process of inference, but you can get pretty good at it. But anyway, so then these cables, these large routes, so SEMUE 4, SEMUE 5, SEMUE stands for Southeast Asia, Middle East, Western Europe is the acronym, the full acronym. Those are consortium cables where a bunch of different telecoms band together. All those are led by Singtel, is kind of the head honcho. But
any content providers in there, or are these all top?
Let's see. I guess you'd have to, if you went and checked the submarinecablemap.com, they usually list the owners.
Okay.
And so probably starting with SEMUE 5, about those content providers. It was like a day.
Yeah, the Googs and the Metas.
Yeah, everybody showed up and they all started driving the submarine cable industry, which considering its importance to the global internet and global economy, these are projects that are sometimes $1 billion to put in a cable from one faraway place to another. A lot of work goes into this, and the payoff, the ROI is actually, considering the risk that's involved, it's not super attractive. So it ends up being it's a tough go.
People that need it make it happen.
Yeah, right. So then, you need a consortium of people who are going to be the captive audience. The captive audience is the ones putting up the money to build this thing because they absolutely need it. But it's always like this, and submarine cable conferences, there's always a discussion about building business case models of trying to justify the expense. And then all of a sudden content providers show up and just with like endless resources to build anything. And so then, there's a lot of hand wringing around in the industry around, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Are they just crowding everybody out? Or are they?
When people are talking about balloons and blimps for internet, there's the one hand in which it's great to provide people access. There's the other in which the cynics would say, well, that's because there are some people that think it's unfair if somebody in the world can't click on an ad. So, somewhere in between, there's truth.
Or let me put another idea is that let's say because it's cool, they're going to fly balloons into country X. Well, there was a startup that was trying to make a profit at creating a local business to provide service, and now they're up against these balloons that have they don't have to turn a profit, they don't have to do anything, and they'll just operate until they find it's not cool anymore and just leave. In the meantime, this company goes out of business and these guys go bankrupt. So there could be sometimes these unintended consequences.
Let's try to get them on a future podcast. It's always interesting. We still need to get Jared with his local ISP, and we got Elliot Noss.
Oh, sure.
I need to follow up with him about, I talked with him about why would you start an ISP nowadays, but there's some cool stuff.
That would be a great conversation. I would love to make one.
Anyway, sorry. So back to Egypt. What was the impact and what countries, performance?
Right. So let's see. We knew there was a major submarine cable outage affecting basically countries in East Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia. Is where it was showing up in our traffic stats. In the end, it was an overland circuit over Egypt. So the way all these cables go is, ships will go through the Suez Canal, but the submarine cables don't go through the canal. They have to come up on land, and they go either. There's a couple of routes that come up in Abu Talat or Alexandria or the port cities in the Mediterranean. They cross the desert and then drop back in the Red Sea. Or there's also an option you can run it in the cement casing on the side of the canal itself. You're not in the water, but you're up out of the ground or out of the water. But
so
there's a route. Right. If there's a break, you can get into it. But so everything comes out of the water and then it goes back into the water. And so because it's out of the water, that means if something breaks, there's a fix. You can send a technician over there, and it's a matter of hours versus it could be days or weeks if it was in a deep sea location if it was a submarine cable.
Yeah.
And so in this case, again, it was something that was on land. They could get a technician there to fix it, and then it was just a matter of, I think, something on the order of 4 hours. But we could see, a lot of different countries impacted. Others could too. So I mentioned in the blog just some of the other outfits that are other internet watchers like me. We try to come up with what would be our unique view into this. And so I did pull up one. So Ooredoo, which is Qatar Telecom's new branding it's probably like a decade old now, but that one I thought was the cleanest view. It's in the blog post of a visualization of the what the loss of this circuit knocked out a couple of their transit providers. There was a shift. They basically stayed online, but it got rejumbled over 4 hours to rejigger their transit to stay online.
Mm-hmm.
And the other insight that is kind of flipping around, I was like, well, we do a lot of cloud measurement. We do at Kentik, so we do a lot of synthetic performance monitoring between the various cloud regions of all the major cloud providers. And so I know, just doing this from in the past, that if you see a route like this that's going through Egypt, through the Mediterranean, the cloud providers have to use the same stuff. Normal people like you and I have to use. We all have to use the same.
Denis Ducharme of IBM says, "Without the network, there is no cloud." Or he alternatively says, "Network is the water of the clouds." So
okay, there's many beautiful metaphors. But I was thinking, I was like, well, I know, because we looked at this. I think a year ago there was something like this where we also noticed this, and I was like, let me go check and look at all of our routes going across between any cloud region in Europe and cloud region in South Asia. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, we could see the impact fairly well. And what was interesting was that there's different impact by cloud provider, and so based on our stats, based on our data, you could see the initial blip for AWS connectivity across this route, but it resolved itself fairly quickly. Azure seemed like it had a period of a couple hours of higher latencies, but no packet loss. But Google Cloud seemed like they didn't weather this one that well. No matter which direction we went, we saw higher packet loss, higher latency. So that's interesting. So that has to do with how the cloud contracts its routes, and how well it can fail over to backup connectivity. For these links, we were spotting a lot of stuff that was falling over.
Well, it's interesting because, the first question I was going to ask about this is, it can be difficult for people that are not in the routes and the packets and the bits and the bytes to understand that in some ways connectivity can be much more network topological than, geographically topological. It's like how the networks connect can affect performance and routing outages and things much more. So just because two things are in a country doesn't mean they're going to have good performance, or just because something is 3 countries away doesn't mean it'll have worse. So when you look at what happened with the circuit outage, were there, if you look for the non-cloud, were there some, were any countries entirely cut off, or was it really just provider by provider for given? So if there's fewer providers and one big one is affected, that affects more of it, but doesn't knock out all the traffic to a country. Like, were there any countries completely cut off, or was it
Somalia? But that's they're kind of a unique situation. There's really only one submarine cable serving them, the Easy cable, and they have just limited connectivity.
Minus whatever satellite that we may not geo.
They don't. When these what I've seen over the last 10 plus years, when a submarine cable arrives, the market for bulk satellite just dries up. We saw this in Tonga just in January. The volcano, had a dish been up and ready to go, it might have gotten knocked over anyway. But it wasn't ready to go. They had long since gotten rid of their backup satellite, which was how they had stayed online prior to that submarine cable coming online. Yeah. And so we'd see this all over Africa, where countries that as soon as that submarine cable came aboard or came ashore, everybody switched over. The satellite's gone.
You're not going to do gigabit to the home on 24 megabit uplink by satellite. So
there's a capacity thing, but also they don't even seem to keep it around. It's even too costly as a dormant backup It just seems to be the case.
It is very expensive, but the LEO stuff is making it less expensive. So then if I could make a further leap, if you go to the snow crash view, the dystopian cyberpunk view, in essence, the large tech companies, the cloud providers will be the countries of the future. So countries in the future.
Maybe we're already there.
Well,
we just
there
don't
are
know
some
it.
that would say that we are. So maybe, it's there's two kinds of countrywide impact. One is the internet countries and one is the physical countries. And, these are large communities that need to collaborate. And so they also, and I know they all do work very hard at finding, redundant multipath connectivity and looking at performance and, all these things.
That's true. I mean, I don't want to disparage anybody. These guys are the best. They have a lot of smart people, a lot of resources. So it was actually kind of surprising to see the severe issues that our data was showing for Google.
So I guess the last question topically. So, I saw your tweet about, it's exam time in Syria again. Let's shut the internet down. And I was just thinking, is this really the new norm? Are we just going to be seeing this? Is this full employment for you and others? Is this, do you it is anything's going to change?
It is one that's hard to get your mind around. I just explained this, I think at this conference in Bonn, Germany. Again, people were like, what is this? Or like, just can't kind of understand this. And again, for those who are unfamiliar with this, the situation is, so take Iraq, which was the first one that I started reporting on in, I think 2015. So at that time, you imagine that ISIS has taken Mosul and is threatening Baghdad. There's like a heat wave, riots for corruption, all these things are happening. And the internet goes down. And I had a well-placed contact in the Iraqi government, and so I'm reaching out to him. I said, "What's happening here?" And he's like, "You're not going to believe this. It's student exams." I was like, "You're going to have to explain that to me." Like I assumed it was something. There's all these huge things happening in this country, and that's what they turned the internet off for. But here's the explanation: is that in a country like Iraq, these are there's national tests at 6th grade. If you don't score high enough, that's the end of your public education. And to be
there's a surprising number of countries where there's something like that goes on.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know if for anybody who read the book Freakonomics for years back, when discussion of when you make the consequences so severe, you end up justifying cheating. You're justifying extreme measures to avoid these extreme consequences. And so, in this case, if you are a parent in one of these countries, your kids have got a lot of cards stacked against you, against them, and so they want to get any kind of help they can. And so then what ends up happening is over time the tests get compromised, cheating becomes rampant, and so then this is like a last-ditch effort to try to regain control over a system that's gotten out of hand. But it's not, I guess didn't happen in Iraq this year, but yeah, Syria, Sudan. Someone reached out to me to ask me to look into Algeria, which I guess is doing something similar. Sometimes it's the whole country's down, or sometimes just mobile service.
Right.
The way it works in Syria is that they take down the backbone of the country while they physically distribute the tests, and then when they bring the backbone back up, and the mobile service comes down while the kids are taking the tests. Anyway, this is what happens.
Better. I mean, you would think a Faraday cage would be better, but
but that's what.
And there's I mean, you follow some of the policy stuff. There's no UN group talking about internet as a human right and trying to form a treaty, basically saying that internet won't be used for.
So there are digital rights organizations that fervently push back on this. Access Now is the one that probably is, I'd argue, that maybe the most prominent. They're an organization that we kind of support with some technical consultation. I try to let those folks know about things. For example, when this submarine cable cut occurred a couple of weeks ago. That's now on my list, is to let some of the folks in the digital rights space know that something happened with that's infrastructure based and not government directed shutdown, just so because they're going to start receiving complaints or receiving people claiming that there's a shutdown or something. And so that's a high up on my list, is to let those folks know, like, all right, something just happened and it's not, this is something broke. Like, it wasn't a government directed thing. But I know that they try to push back, but in the end, we still live in a Westphalian world of countries are absolute sovereigns, and if they want to make a bad decision, they can do so.
We're fortunate that internet governance itself has survived internationalization. I'll just say, I'm not saying it's necessarily good for so far. I'm not saying it's necessarily good for any one country, to be the only, but when things turn to politicking and interests, and especially with the value of IP space, and domains being what it is, it's good that things are working as well as they are. So, any other hot topics, things going on? Connecting the infrastructure and news, or just infrastructure wise?
I think that's all I've got for today.
Well, I actually do hope it'll be a calm next few months, and history, especially with war going on, might not. If history projects forward, you might not think that, but I certainly hope that. And we'll do an update to this as there is more news.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Doug, for joining, and so late from Germany.
No problem.
Thanks to the audience for listening to Network AF in this episode. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, at our webpage, and your favorite podcast listings around you. And Doug, if people are curious to contact you, how can they do that?
Usually you can follow me on Twitter and send me a message. If you get me going, I love talking about this stuff. So Avi can vouch for that.
Absolutely. We've talked for hours and hours. And I'm Avi at Kentik.com, and Avi Freedman on Twitter and LinkedIn. Thanks again.